Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Italian-born, Kansas City-based jazz trumpeter Alberto Racanati. He opened up about his latest 2022 album called Into the Woods. He talked about coming to Kansas City and so much more. Originally from Bari, southern Italy, Alber comes from a classical background. He started in 2017, and when he began experimenting, he combined trumpet with synthesizers. He released his first self-titled album in 2020, followed by his second album called Journey in 2021. His music is a very nostalgic combination of synthwave sounds, jazz, and so much more. Enjoy the story. Hey, it's great to meet you.
My pleasure, Joe. Thanks for having me over.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw your name come up via the 1909 Club, and
Okay.
I just really enjoy running into brand new artists in the Kansas City area. You have a great background. I'm really looking forward to getting into it. So thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today.
Absolutely. It's totally my pleasure.
So let's start off here at the top before we kind of get into how you got to Kansas City and all of the things that are going on with your life. I want to know, how did you survive COVID? The jazz community was hit pretty hard, and I'm curious how you survived it and how it's kind of changed the way that you go about things now.
Okay, that's a pretty large encompassing question. Well, I will say first of all that I am kind of new-ish to the jazz community in this town, or at all, because my background is completely coming from classical music. So I've always played outside of it. I've always played in bands and or other projects outside of classical music. But it's been really in the past year and a half, so really coming back from COVID, kind of reopening a little bit, that I've been entering more in that kind of scene. So the way I lived through COVID was, I had some projects that kept me somewhat sane and alive, like most of us did. And really, I used it as a chance, despite of all the horrible things that were going out, to really zoom into my production and my music making, and kind of like trying to, go through this perennial musical soul searching, right? Which we kind of all go through. And in one way, it was good to be able to zoom really hard into something. The other way, music is beautiful because we do it for other people, with other people, and that just didn't happen, right? So coming back from it, I personally don't know if I still have the perspective needed to tell you how it's affecting me to this moment. I'm sure that we're still, me and everybody else I see around me who is in this business, in this scene, they definitely are still going through the process of, okay, let's go back to life. Let's have a social life, social living, the way it used to. And it's kind of tough sometimes to remind yourself that you gotta leave the house and, shut off all these distractions that kind of kept us sane and connected during those difficult years. But going back to what it was, it's not the easiest thing to do. Another thing also is that I am from another country. I'm originally from Italy, and I guess we're going to talk about that. But I kept my pulse constantly over, what was happening to me. I lived through COVID in America, in Kansas City. But at the same time, I was reading every day the news. I was talking to friends and family on a daily basis. And so really having my finger on the pulse of two different places that really tackled this situation in a very, very, very different way, in a way made me feel like the way we've had it here in Kansas City, it was for the most part, it was just up to the way I wanted to live it, more than something that came from above or something like that. So I feel fortunate for being in the place where I've been during COVID. And I know that certain other places have been hit way hard in terms of obviously the disease, but also in terms of restrictions and rules that they had to go by for a variety of reasons. Obviously, everything comes with a cause. So yeah, been looking around. I've been doing lots of soul searching, and it's been kind of great to come out of COVID at the same time having pursuing a new project, something that it's feels fresh and exciting to me. So in that way, it's been feeling like it's been spring for the past year.
Well, and you have a new album out, and I think with the community, not having live shows and everything being kind of turned upside down, it has to feel relieving that you do have a new album, Into the Woods. Talk to me a little bit about, having an album and what it means, especially being relatively new to Kansas City to kind of have this statement to bring.
It always feels great to put your music out there and to feel seen and heard. Really the action of putting a release out there, it's really something empowering, especially if you come, as I said before, from a classical background where you may go your entire life without ever putting your name on a track or a song or an album that is yours, that you wrote yourself. So in that sense, it's a very refreshing and empowering feeling. It's nice to see that whatever you're doing out there, whatever people are doing, even if sometimes can be hard to categorize, still gets taken for what it is. In the local scene here in Kansas City, I feel that there is something rather unique in the sense that we are I call this a big town or a small city, whichever way you want to see it. And that means that there is maybe somewhat a tight circle of musicians, which is still pretty large, obviously, but that means that it's easier for you to cross genres. It's easy for you to work with people that maybe in a place like New York you will never get to collaborate with, in a way, because it's needed. There is not so many people. It's not so dispersive. Same time, it's great because you can you can listen to all these different artists. And I will definitely say that being in Kansas City inspired me in that regard, with lots of playing and listening to lots of styles of music that I never thought I was going to get into. One late addition to my musical suitcase, so to speak, is being the big, huge Hispanic Mexican community that is in Kansas City. I played, and I still do sometimes, as a mariachi in all around town. And for example, that is something that one way or the other has crept its way into my music and into what I do. And I'm fairly sure that that wouldn't probably have happened, as an Italian guy playing into that kind of circle, getting into that kind of scene. Probably wouldn't have happened if I was in London, New York, or a bigger place where more people are available. Therefore, you may not want to source your musicians super out of the box, if that makes sense.
Certainly does. So let's go back to your beginnings of where you were born and raised and kind of how the seeds of jazz and music got into you, maybe some early influences.
Yeah, so I am from a small town nearby the city of Bari, Bari, in southern Italy, the heel of the boot, if you know what I'm talking about. And that's where I was born and raised. So coming up in I started playing trumpet when I was about in middle school, mostly classically related, but I've always had interest for other kinds of music. And basically my way through high school, I was really, really, really into rock and heavy metal and those kind of rebel genres and all that kind of thing. And I played in a variety of bands. I played bass guitar, I played drums. Then eventually, this is a larger conversation. Musical studies in Italy are clearly designed in a slightly different way than the American college system. So by the time I was 20, I was almost done with the entirety of my academic life in Italy that was available to me in Italy. And I enrolled in a student exchange program. And when I was 21, I went to spend 2 years in Gdańsk, Poland. So on the Baltic Sea, the other side of of Europe. That was also my first time leaving my country. So if you live at the tip of a peninsula, you might as well live on an island for that matter. So It was kind of special to me. I did not speak the language, and I didn't know, I didn't have a lot of experience with being abroad, and I loved every moment of it. So from that moment on, I kind of decided to pursue music more and more seriously, to really invest myself and see how far could I go with it. So after 2 years there, through a very random connection that I had over there, I moved to America in 2014 to pursue a master's at Western Illinois University in Macomb, Illinois. It's a small college town 4 hours south of Chicago. Okay, it's probably midway between Kansas City and Chicago. And spent 2 years there, got my master's, and then it was about time after that. I decided to stay in the country as a foreign student, as an immigrant student in America. Once you're done with your degree, you have two choices: you can get enrolled into another degree or leave. So I decided to stay, and I moved to Kansas City, went to UMKC, where I pursued my doctoral degree, and I started getting into the underground and going to incredible places like the Green Lady Lounge and the Mutual Musician Foundation, and all that. For me, it was the first time really living in a musical city. That is all stuff that I grew up with, the imaginary of the American jazz city, which many times is like New York in the movies. So in a way, I still come from this foreign view of things. Kansas City really has, to me, this noir vibe of the 30s and 40s, the economical boom in the city. And there's still places that look completely like that in the inside. So I started going to these venues. I started making friends in the jazz department in school. And so I started playing a few shows as Alber, as my own electronic music / jazz project in late 2019, early 2020. In a way, I don't want to say I'm glad that we stopped with COVID, but I will say that it worked well with my creative process in that moment. It was a good time for me to hit the pause button, to go back to the studio and understand what I was doing. So yeah, it started probably in 2019. It's when I started going out and play a few shows. I've always loved to play jazz. I have experience playing in big bands and various projects like that, but it's with fusion between electronic music, so really playing music with synthesizers, drum machines, still playing an instrument, but of the electronic kind, and the fusion of jazz, trumpet, kind of, one of the big inspiration records for me is the soundtrack to the movie Chinatown. Really epic trumpet recording, very noir. So I try to use a lot of those colors. I'm very inspired by those colors in my instrument, but also in the writing. So really, those two things together made me begin this project.
So, what kind of culture shock, what kind of transition did you have to make coming from Italy to America?
Ooh, all kinds. Where do I start? Well, I will say that it was probably the greatest thing for me to have this buffer time in this tiny college town, because I was very green to the culture. I did not speak great English. I did not know what inches and feet were, and all that kind of stuff. And there I was lucky enough to have friends and faculty that were kind of like, okay, this is how we do things here, So in a way, I needed that kind of schooling to just, learn how to be a person. Because it's very easy as somebody coming from outside. You come in as a student, so it's not like you're out there working and getting all these great opportunities that America is so famous for. You're there kind of studying all day. You're busy as you never were before. At the same time, you are kind of poor and excluded. So you have to realize where you are and what you have to work for. One of the biggest shocks, probably in the musical sense, we want to talk about that, obviously, is that there is just a lot of positive reinforcement here in school. In generally, when we talk about, I'm also a teacher here in Kansas City, so that's also a thing I'm interested in. But there's a lot of positive reinforcement when it comes to music. There's a lot of interest for what's not there, it needs to be researched on. Whereas where I come from, there is more of this attitude where you really are not that good until you become very good, right? Nobody's there pushing you along the way. So that was something that needed some adjustment. In a way, I still do. I'm working over that. And also the fact that America is famous for, their, being always avant-garde in terms of music, and all the hot new things, or most of them, really come from here. And so kind of like under being on the soil here and understanding how that does that happen, concretely, that's also very refreshing, but at the same time takes some time to be used to, because you kind of come from a culture where the same music has been used for and listened to for the past maybe 40 years. Taste does not change as abruptly as maybe it can here. And so you have to learn how to keep up and expand your horizons. Obviously, another thing is that, living with the continuous existence of, I don't want to say a self-centered society because it has a negative implication, but I will say the individualism, the omnipresent individualism in here. It's also something that is not really simple to wrap your head around if you don't live here. And I come from a society that is still Western, obviously, and it's still fairly easy to relate to. But at the same time has a little bit less of the individual mind, and it has definitely more of the collective mind when I talk about how decisions are made, how society works, diversity around people. There's lots of things that you really need to live here in America to really begin to understand. I mean, it's a lifelong journey, obviously. So those would be one of the few ones that come to my mind. But I mean, the imperial system is another one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you like the best about Kansas City and the jazz scene?
So yeah, what I said before, it's I love the fact that it's so easy to get to talk to so many people that do other things and to get inspired by them. If you play 10 gigs in this city, you guaranteed will go to the 11th and you will meet somebody. It's probably even less than that. So I like how tightly knit everything is. I love how, people are just happy if you walk up to them and you just talk to them, and that feels great. So that's especially true in the jazz community. So I have a few jazz mentors, if you want to call them that, in the city, kind of people who show me, okay, you play this genre of music, let me tell you a little bit better how this works, and let me tell you where this comes from. So trusted sources, so to speak. And I love the fact that it's so easy and available for everybody to really go out there and get this kind of culture, get this kind of knowledge. Yeah, so those are some of the things that definitely made me stay. There is a fairly decent gig scene as well. There's places that promote local jazz music. There's places that promote really whatever music. It's also nice that the same place can play lots of genres through the week. So if you're in that circle, once you're in that circle, which is not so hard to get into, you really get to, if you're into that kind of thing, you get to experience so many genres of music. Now, if you're one of the purists, that you may have to work a little harder to find your bubble, but I believe that you can still do that kind of thing. It's still a big enough city for you to find what you're looking for. So if I was a bebop purist, I would have a little scene I can get into. If I was a swing purist, like I would have my little scene. I kind of like to keep it slightly intersectional, if you know what I mean. So I like to see the variety of it, and there's people who are expert and fluent in so many different genres. So that's pretty refreshing for me.
So, what do you like the best about being a professional musician?
Oh, well, I really love to play music that makes people feel something. I love when I feel it's kind of rare. It's not every day, but I love feeling being of service to somebody. For that was very that's something that happens with for example, when I mentioned before, when I played mariachi music, um, playing as an immigrant, playing for other immigrants and giving them feelings of their land and their culture, even though I may not necessarily be a part of it, but providing that service, I could tell that there was something bigger than just entertainment that I was providing. Or playing some of your music in a club and you see somebody who, tears up, or they're really having a good time and they're vibing with you, kind of giving people that X factor, if you want to call them that, that thing that makes them feel good, makes them feel a certain way, whether those are good or bad emotions, or somber emotions. That's really great. Obviously, it's also really, really cool to see that, at least in here, you can, I came out with my own project, and sometimes in certain other cities, in certain places, it can be kind of hard, depending on the genre too, to be out there with your own music, with your originals. And so far I play sets and shows where every single note I play is comes from me. So I don't really play covers, and being able to do that, to just do your thing and still be successful at it and be heard, is just a great feeling. Whenever people say, "Hey, my music made me feel this, this, and that," it always makes my day every single time. So I kind of live for that.
So, why do you love jazz?
Well, I love I guess that going back to the uh, American individualism, I love how, there's boxes that you gotta be fit into, that you gotta fit into, and all that, but it's just the pure expression of yourself, and it's just like an expression of how you feel. And even if you don't feel good a certain day, your chops are not responding, or you're like in a bad headspace, whatever, you can still use that to push forward your own soul, your own message. I love the individuality. No two people sound the same. And it's sometimes if I have to play something in orchestra, I am always on my toes. Okay, am I going to respond in that specific way? Can I blend with everybody else? But when I'm playing jazz, if I'm playing with a band, if I'm playing a solo show, it's a different feeling, because I know that I'm just enough. I know that whatever I'm feeling, whatever I'm playing, as long as it's authentic and it comes from me, it's just an expression of myself, and that's what this music is really about. So it's really great to hear musicians that are just about doing their own thing together with other people, and they developed a language around it that is centered over your individual musicianship, and you can really project it out there. And I love how jazz is this vessel for these incredible musicians over years who have just, put their musical thoughts and their soul out there, which wasn't always perfect in a more academic sense, but in a way it was absolutely perfect every single time, because that's what the music is about.
So, everyone out there has a perception of you, an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your fans, but ultimately you live your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Ah, that's a good one. Well, I would say, I'm a musician. Lately, I just gotten down to, I stripped every other adjective down from that description. I'm a musician. I like to think that I am melting a few genres together. I sometimes sometimes I refrain a little bit to associate my music with the purest meaning of the word jazz per se. But there's definitely elements of jazz music in my trumpet, in my writing, for sure. I like to put together the beat culture, so Dilla and that kind of stuff. I like to put together noir themes with trumpet. As I said before, Chinatown, big influence. And obviously, where I've been, my life experience coming from Italy, I would say a word that I use a lot describing myself is immigrant. That's something that that's a badge that I wear proudly. So really this traveling, journeying soul, that's how I feel most of the time, really between a couple words at the same time.
Excellent. Hey, if anyone out there wants to get the new album, see you live in Kansas City, anything related to your world, where can they find all this out and get what they need to get involved with your music?
Yeah, so I'm mostly active on Instagram these days. My handle is Alber_sounds. I also have a website, albersounds.com. And I have a bunch of shows coming up. I will be at the 1909 Club actually one more time on Friday, May 5th. And I will be at KC Beer Co. on May 12th. And I will be playing at the Rhino on May 13th. And I have other stuff coming. But if you join me on one of my social media pages, you will know all about it.
Right on, Alber. This has been great. Yeah, my family is part of my family. My dad was full-blooded Italian, came from Shaka, Sicily, and the other part came from Naples. So,
amazing.
Yeah, I've been to the old country. I had a pen pal in high school. I went to Castle Ferentino, which is south of Florence. I've been to Rome, and I was actually in Italy on the day of 9/11. So I have a lot of history there. So it's great that you're here in Kansas City. I'm so glad that that it's been good for you, and I look forward to catching you live at some point here soon.
Thank you so much, Joe, for the welcome.
Thanks for listening and tuning into another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in Italy, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Alber for his time, energy, and story. If you want more Neon Jazz interviews, you can find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe to us at YouTube, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.